Good morning, class. How have you been? I hope all of you are doing really well. I'm very happy because just like I had requested, all of you have posted comments about what you thought about Andrew Motion's poem, The Last Call. And many of the opinions and points that you have mentioned are very insightful, very deep. I can understand that you have put in some effort into understanding the poem deeper. Now, if somebody asks me actually what poetry means or what actually is the function of poetry, there might be many answers, but one significant answer that I consider as very relevant is that poetry often acts as a platform for us to reflect upon the ideas of life. Poetry at times becomes a vessel for us to think about many deeper problems or deeper questions of life. So, similarly, one significant question that has always bugged humanity or always kept humanity mystified is the question of death. Now, there have been many approaches to understand death or to philosophize death, but even now, death is a very mysterious thing to us. There are many poets and writers who have written about death, and there are many writers who are obsessed about the idea of death. So, why is the idea of death so important to us living beings? Mm. Now, many opinions had been given in the stream of the classroom. I was very happy with many observations. You mentioned how the attitude of the speaker transitions by the end of the poem about death, and you have mentioned how the speaker is actually accepting the inevitability of death. Along with that, those are all wonderful points, and this is a very brief poem. I need not explain it that much. You guys seem to be doing a very good job at it. But there is one point that I thought probably would be uh, a bit more deeper or a bit more helpful to you. Many of you had actually reached the tip of that point, but you need to just go a little bit ahead to get into the crux of the argument of that idea. Now, the idea is that death is omnipresent in our everyday life. If I say that death is omnipresent in our everyday life, you might understand it differently. But the angle from which I am viewing it is that death is something that influences and shapes the way in which we function every day. That is, we already know that there is a destination called death towards which we are heading every day. And this understanding actually makes us understand our existence better. If we had a notion that we would be living eternally or our life would go on non-stop, will we be living the exact same way as we live now? uh, I think you should ask yourself that question. If we knew that we would not die, how would we live? It would be rather different or entirely different, drastically different. So this idea of death being a destination to which we are heading actually shapes the way in which we understand life. I think one of you had mentioned death and life are intertwined in the comments, and that's very true. And that's because of this, because many of our actions, many of our beliefs, many of our worldviews, many of our attitudes towards life, many of our actions in everyday lives, many of our relationships, everything is shaped under the premise that death lies ahead. If that was not there, the way in which we would have understood the world would be entirely different. So death is something that actually something it can be viewed as something positive. Death is something which actually gives the kind of vigor and vibrance to the present life, because we are anticipating death, so we want to make the best of our lives. So probably could that be why the speaker in the poem finally actually falls in love with death? So this is a question for you to answer. Now today I have a conference to attend. I want you to ponder upon this question and post your opinions in the comments, and we'll continue the discussion. This is a very brief poem. I think it can, but have you listened to Andrew Motion before? If you have, you will understand that he's a very simple person, but the kind of things that he writes, even though they may seem simple, uh, they carry very deep and philosophical ideas beneath them. They take us into a strange terrain through the ordinary experience of every day. So, this poem is not that different. So, uh, every reading, according to your personal experience, your understanding of life, every reading would actually produce a new meaning. So, I want all of you to read the poem and come up with new interpretations and new meanings. This is just one pointer that I gave you to think about. You can further develop this idea, so I want you to do that and post your opinions in the comments. And if possible, we'll have an active discussion also. So, thank you for being with me now. We'll see you. We'll meet in the next class. Thank you.